let's not beat around the bush, shall we? I just spent the last half hour listening to a scientist from a particular organisation talking about how we'd heated up the surface of this planet recently, and that humans were part of the cause of global warming, and it was mainly down to CO2. His conclusion is that we need to cool the northern and southern hemispheres of this planet down by means of seeding the atmosphere with particulates, so that they can form platforms for condensation, precipitation, and also with extra vapour being in the atmosphere, it can also block out incoming inbound solar radiation, and therefore protect the caps of the planet. It's this knocks on what I was saying the other day in the video. I mean, I've been talking about this, what the consequences are and what we're dealing with for many years, well over 5 years now. A couple of years on this channel, at least 4 or 5 on the other channel, and we're not getting through to anyone really. The point is, and the big point is this, is that we shouldn't be trying to change the nature of the way this planet goes about its business. We should be trying to adapt and live alongside it. You're just going to waste all your efforts. We are well aware of cloud seeding, chemtrails, they're more commonly known as, and some countries, believe it or not, don't cover it up like we do over here in the West. But it's a wasted effort. It really is. What we should be doing is living alongside nature, because even well before humans was on this planet, it was going through ice ages and warm periods and ice ages again, and these cycles are well established in the scientific community. So I don't think our place is, just because the last 50 years of technological advancement, is to meddle with the climate at all. Let it do its thing. On this planet, the ice caps haven't been always where they are right now. There are different locations for these ice caps, and they will continue to be in different locations over the next 1 or 2 years. What we should be doing is concentrating on adapting and living alongside these changes, not trying to prevent them or alter the climate on this planet. We're not there yet. Some people and some scientists believe that we are well there with the technology, and we can angle whatever it is we can have as far as an input in is concerned. But if you're talking about adding more particulates to the atmosphere to try and cool it down, well, you won't need to, because if I just stop this animation of the jet streams right now, and we have a look at the amount of particulates over the northern hemisphere, you'll see that there are plenty there already. This is a natural process. I've been saying this for years. The Earth does warm up and it does cool down. Majority it's responsible for the solar output. When we have low solar output, it shouldn't strike anyone as out of the ordinary that we're going to get cooler climates. We've got records of this going back to the Maunder minimum, the Dalton minimum, and we've seen it gradually increase up to the 1900s and the present millennium. But things have changed. I've got some charts. Someone said you should back up more of what you say with data, so let's do that. Let's get into that. Let's first of all have a look at the particulates in the atmosphere then over the northern hemisphere. So here we have the dust extinction, and these are the particulates that are in the air, the dust particulates. And we'll just take a little roll around the equatorial region, northern hemisphere. You can see that there doesn't need to be any more there, and what you've got to remember is that this is blocking out solar radiation as it is. It's also fundamentally causing some of the precipitation over these regions due to the fact that these dust particulates are very good cloud seeding platforms. This is where water droplets in the atmosphere condense upon these dust particles, and eventually they build up and you get precipitation. So this is just the dust. We can switch over to have a look at the sulfur dioxide content, this is SO4, sulfur dioxide. This is what your volcanoes emit out of them when they erupt. I've been saying to people, you don't need one supervolcano to erupt to cool the climate down of this planet. You can do a very good job with just lots of little volcanoes erupting, and volcanic eruptions have been on the increase over the last 100 years. So let's have a look at the temperature then, and what we can clearly see that from around about the 1940s, well, let's go back to the 1900s. Let's say from the 1900s there has been a gradual increasing of temperature, which has led to almost a 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature over land and oceans combined. But let's have a look at the solar output for that period of time, so from the 1900s to at least the 2000s. Let's see if we can see something showing an increase in sunspot numbers and solar activity since the 1900s that could probably answer that question for us as to what has caused the warming period. One thing I will say just before I bring up the sunspot numbers chart is that from the 1900s to the present day, one thing has been happening. And it shouldn't come as a surprise, really, because if you've got a biosphere, which is really what we live on this planet, the actual glass casing, I'm not going down the road of the flat earthers here, but I'm just saying that the atmosphere does act as a containment area for the atmosphere, which is just in a fluid state because it's gas. It is still there. Now, if you heat the biosphere, then what's going to happen is more evaporation. It stands to reason. The more you heat, the more vapor goes into the atmosphere. And what do you think it will happen when the atmosphere gets saturated? Well, I want you to think about on a foggy day, if you've ever got a torch and try to shine the torch over a distance, and what you'll find is the water vapor in the fog that's creating the fog will block out the sun's beam. The torch's beam over a distance. You could try this with a laser light, and the experiment would go something like this. You'd do it in perfect conditions on the evening, and you'd measure the brightness of the laser over 300 meters, and then wait for a foggy evening to come, or morning mist, dew, or whatever, and then repeat the experiment and see how much brightness gets cut back. And that's no difference to what's happening to our biosphere. When there's more sunlight, it produces over a long period of time, such as this over the last 100 years or so, more water vapor. But what will eventually happen is it will have a reverse effect. Now, we're going to start to see the temperature dropping, as we have done early indications over the last 5 years, at least since 2007. We're going to see these temperatures dropping, and what that's going to be caused through is a build-up of lower forming clouds caused through evaporation. And also, as we're going through a period of time where we've got a 20% weakening of the magnetosphere because of the magnetic pole migration that's taking place, the pole shifts are happening, and what's happened there is it's allowing more cosmic particles in, and they themselves provide perfect foundations for more evaporation. Now, what I think you'll agree is that what we are seeing is sporadic floods more often, and that is because as the clouds that are low-lying pass over higher altitudes, they become cooler and cooler, and they start to condense. And if these clouds are in large volumes of water vapor, they're carrying large volumes of water vapor, then it's going to dump it out very quickly, and you're going to end up with these flash floods. It does lead to a positive effect, which I've talked about on other videos before. So let's have a look then on the solar output, with regards to sunspot numbers from the 1900s to see if we can see, an increase in solar activity and, I think that I should answer the question as to why, this has increased by, over the last 100 years, according to the chart we're looking at now, by 1 degree Celsius. So here we are on the 400 years of sunspot observations chart. We can see from the 1900s that there has been, lo and behold, an increase in solar activity with regards to sunspots alone. That means more solar output, more solar flares, and as a result you get warmer weather, warmer climate. But as you can see, the chart goes up to about 2000 and then you start to see it drop off. Let me just show you what's happening since then. Well, as you can see for yourselves, solar cycle 24, which we're in currently, is the smallest cycle out of all three of them that you can see. It's been dropping off since 1985, and as we know, with the chart that I showed you, 400 years of sunspot observations, when it drops to zero and it remains there for a prolonged period of time, we face periods such as the Maunder minimum, which was described at the time in the 1800s as the mini ice age. So you're probably saying, well, why come the temperatures then have increased, and even to more recent times they've increased? Well, this is temperature on the grand scale. And what you've got to remember is this is a very large inertia. To give you some form of idea of what I'm talking about, is this planet's millions and millions of years old, and it still has, from the point of creation, a very hot core, a liquid molten core. Now, it's still molten to this day. Proof of that is we get volcanic eruptions, we get seafloor spreading along the Atlantic ridges of this planet. So what I'm saying is it takes a long time to cool very large surfaces or large amounts of matter down, especially when they're on the scale of planets. So, just as it took 100 years to increase 1 degree Celsius, it's going to lag slightly before we start to go into, possibly, if it continues like this, perhaps another ice age, or at least another mini ice age. What we've got to also account for here is that this is happening during a period of time where we're going through a magnetic reversal. Now, some of you might be aware, according to some core sampling that was done, that showed in our history, not so many thousand years ago, around about 41,000 years ago, the planet went through an ice age, or was experiencing an ice age, and during that period of time there was a uncompleted magnetic reversal, which held for a small amount of years in comparison to how the historical record shows, when the Earth goes through a magnetic reversal, it usually holds its polarity if it's reversed for a long period of time. But if it's only on a scale of perhaps hundreds of years, it won't be considered a complete reversal. And around 41,000 years ago, or it might have been 21,000 years ago, I'm just pulling information from my memory now, what happened was we was not only in an ice age, but we was also in a period of time where we was going through a magnetic reversal. So these things have to be factored in as well, and you don't see climatologists even factoring those things in at the moment. I just want to say, there's nothing that mankind can do about the changing of the nature of this planet with regards to climate. It's not really in our best interests, if you asked me, to try and change nature. I think it's always best to work alongside nature and adapt with it. So if it throws up cooler climates, then I suggest we put our efforts into managing ourselves during a cooler climate. And, I think we've got to be looking at there is one of the things that gets really way up there on the list of priorities is crop failures. We've got to work with other countries, perhaps if over the Northern Hemisphere we are going to go through another ice age, then we must be surely we should be building relationships with those countries that are probably going to be on the equatorial regions to supply those much needed crops and resources during that period of time. We shouldn't be trying to add more particulates to the atmosphere to create shielding from the heat, because what's actually happening is the Earth's doing this already naturally, and you're helping it. You're not helping yourselves by chucking more particulates into the atmosphere. This is something really that scientists and organisations should be listening to. People like myself on this channel that have actually given this quite some time and thought. And it just seems logical to do it this way, and not as opposed to the way they are doing it. I mean, they're still pushing global warming, and it bewilders me as to why now they want to push laws into place that anyone that opposes their views on climate could face prosecution over it. It's amazing, really, the times that we're in and the stupidity that we're showing, and we really do, not do ourselves any favour when we believe we're stronger than the forces of nature on this planet. So just before I round this video off, I'll let this clip of 200 years of temperature increase run. Whilst I just say this to you, we talked about the biosphere this planet's got with with reference to the atmospheric gases. Yeah, but what I want to ask you is just to give a bit of thought as to if we're adding more particulates to the atmosphere storage, and what I'm saying is, what do you think's happening to those other gases then? Whilst these others are being added to, what do you think's happening? What do you think's going to happen to those other gases in the atmosphere whilst other gases get added to it? The atmosphere can only hold a certain amount of gases to start with. So if there are like 30 gases, all around 20%, just for argument's sake, in there, and you start to increase one of those gases by more than 20%, what do you think that will have with regards to the net effect of the 20% on the other gases? If the biosphere isn't able to get any larger, what do you think is going to happen to the gases that are present in the atmosphere whilst other gases are increasing in the atmosphere? Because I'll just give you my thoughts on this. My thoughts are that if you're adding extra gases and dust particulates that take up volume in the atmosphere, then it is obviously going to have an effect on those in the biosphere, in reducing them. So, this is one of the reasons why I feel it could be a concern with regards to oxygen amounts. Now, I did talk about in a couple of videos ago, when we measured the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere, how much there was there. And the point is this, is that even though it was old data that we was looking at, but it did show from readings taken in 1991 to the period of 2004 that there was a small depletion in the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere, in that reservoir. And that should really ring alarm bells for you guys, because it's important. It's one of the 3 fundamental things that you need as a species to survive. And that's why I think it's a good idea to look into these hydrogen oxygen generators, in particular the ones that separate the gases, so that you get oxygen coming out of one pipe and hydrogen out the other. For the simple reason is that you needed to replenish stocks of oxygen in your atmosphere surrounding you, or in your vicinity, wherever you are at that point. You can do so with those generators. And that's why I looked into, just briefly, I would like to put some more time into that, and I assure you I will, because I think it's important that we have an ability not only to obtain our own food and water, but we also have the the ability to obtain or make our own oxygen. After all, without one of either of those, we're dead. And if it's something that the human species is facing, then it's dead, as well as a lot of other air-breathing animals. So I think for that reason, it's important. I mean, we don't really know what it was that wiped the dinosaurs out, but what it does appear is that they was all done in one go. Now, that could have been, as some scientists have said, that have studied some of the geological ground samples over that period of time. There seems to have been a lot of dust in the atmosphere during that period of time. But was it the particulates of dust in the atmosphere that choked them out, or was it, like they think, for a meteorite impact that sent trillions of tons of dust into the atmosphere that wiped them out? But was it a deficiency in oxygen that inevitably, using both scenarios, finished the dinosaurs off? And that's why I say it's important. I've been talking on this channel with regards to this for some years. I know that sometimes some of these videos do get looked at by scientists in some of these organisations, but this is, I believe, a more grounded explanation as to what is taking place on this planet. And I do think that I'm right in saying that we should not be trying to change nature at all. This world has gone through many processes over the periods of time since it was created, and it will continue to do that. So in its very essence, it's very natural process that we're going through right now. However, it may have some detrimental impacts for ourselves, and I think that the effort should be spent on trying to adapt to those conditions and not trying to change them, because I do feel that because of the size of the problem that we're facing, it's definitely out of our hands with regards to the inertia of the problem as well. Guys, I really hate it. I really hate having to mention the fact that the channel could always benefit from some extra support from here and there, from a few more people that are doing it right now. I think over the last couple of weeks, I mentioned in the credits, that there was only a small amount, but still, I wanted to thank those people. That's why I put them in the credits. We've got an important message to get out here, and if we keep plugging away at it, with the hope that sometimes, it might pop up as a discussion within these organisations, and that we might break through to them and steer a different course during these times, one that favours more cooperation from governments all around the world, and puts in some protocols that down the road, should we need resources from those parts of the world, we can obtain them. I think that's where we should be going with climate change at the moment. I'm just going to end it there, and just, rebut that fact that, the only thing that affords me to do this is that little bit of money that we raise on the channel. I'm trying to do as much as I possibly can, on the channel, in making the channel better, informing people better. We've got the website up on there, and it shouldn't be too long before we do get the magnetometer station up and running, and then we are in another ball game there, guys. We've got a unique position to monitor the changes of at least one of the anomalies that are taking place on this planet right now. That is the magnetic pole shift. We can closely monitor the strength of the magnetosphere as it depletes during the reversal, and we can also monitor the positions of the magnetic poles. So, on the website, there's going to be, I've covered some of the basic stuff on the Learning Centre. I want to put some more in-depth science, because I know some of you out there can angle, a different level of information, and, that's where I want to go with that. So, I apologise for the time that it's taken to, go through some of these things, but I think that, generally people are interested, and, the truth is it's no short explanation. We're dealing with a lot of different things that have effects in each other's backyards, so, it does take more than 5 minutes to, go through some of these problems, even if it's the only video that you ever watch on this channel. You should get a rough understanding as to what the processes of these anomalies are, and what how they're taking place, and what could possibly be responsible for those changes. So guys, link down below. Please support the channel. Please continue to support the channel, and thanks immensely for those guys that have already. And enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye for now.